When installing a switch between two buildings that are not fed from the same service, there are code and safety issues to consider. Firstly, let's discuss the code issues. Yes, there are code issues to consider, specifically 250.26c, which requires all grounding and bonding equipment to be effectively bonded to the grounding system at each building. Also, 250.104a prohibits the intentional grounding of the equipment grounding conductor, or EG, of a branch circuit outside the building or structure it serves. Secondly, let's discuss safety issues. Safety issues include electrical shock hazard. If the grounding systems of the two buildings are not properly bonded, there may be a potential difference between them, creating a shock hazard. Another safety issue is equipment damage. If the grounding systems are not bonded, overvoltage transients can cause damage to equipment in both buildings. And another safety issue is lightning protection. If the two buildings are not bonded, lightning strikes to one building may not be properly discharged to the ground, increasing the risk of damage or injury. Let's discuss equipment grounding conductor or EG handling. Yes, if possible, the EGC of the switch should remain isolated from the remote structure's ground system. This is because it is not required by code and can create safety hazards by introducing a ground loop. Let's discuss bonding options. First, bonding at the switch. If the switch is installed in a location where it is accessible to personnel from both buildings, the EGC can be bonded to the grounding system of the local building using a bonding conductor. Second, bonding at the service panel. Alternatively, the EGC can be bonded to the grounding system of the local building at the service panel, provided it is in accordance with 250.26c. Here are some recommended actions. 1. Determine the source of the issue. Establish if the issue is caused by a 3-wire feeder or a metallic path between the two structures. 2. Correct any code violations. Address any code issues identified, such as bonding grounding systems and isolating the EGC as necessary. 3. Consider bonding options. Explore the bonding options described above and consult with a qualified electrician to determine the most appropriate solution for your specific situation. 4. Test and document. Conduct continuity tests and document all grounding and bonding measures to ensure compliance with code and safety standards. To elaborate further on the National Electrical Code, or NEC, requirements mentioned earlier, let's delve deeper into what each section entails. 250.26c emphasizes the importance of a unified grounding system across all buildings. This means that all grounding electrodes, such as ground rods, metal water pipes used as grounding electrodes, and the building steel, must be interconnected to form a single, effective grounding system. This interconnected system ensures that all parts of the electrical installation are at the same ground potential, minimizing the risk of voltage differences that can lead to electrical shock or equipment damage. The bonding connections must be made using appropriately sized conductors and connectors listed for the purpose. The size of the bonding conductors is determined by NEC Table 250.66 based on the size of the service entrance conductors. Additionally, all metallic equipment, such as enclosures, raceways, and other non-current carrying metal parts, must be bonded to the grounding system to provide a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source, facilitating the operation of overcurrent protective devices like circuit breakers and fuses. Now, let's consider 250.104a, which addresses the prohibition of intentionally grounding the equipment grounding conductor, or EG, outside the building it serves. The purpose of this rule is to prevent the creation of parallel paths for neutral current, which can occur if the EGC is grounded at multiple points. When neutral current flows through the EGC, it can cause voltage drops and electromagnetic interference, as well as pose a safety hazard. By limiting the grounding of the EGC to a single point within the building, the NEC minimizes the risk of these problems. This rule is particularly important in multi-building installations where the potential for ground loops and parallel neutral paths is greater. It's important to note that this rule does not prohibit the use of supplementary grounding electrodes to improve the overall grounding system. However, These electrodes should be connected to the main grounding electrode system within the building rather than directly to the EGC. In addressing the safety issues associated with unbonded grounding systems, it is crucial to understand the potential hazards involved. Electrical shock is a primary concern, as voltage differences between the grounding systems of separate buildings can expose individuals to dangerous touch potentials. For example, if a person is standing on the ground in one building and touches a metallic object in another building that is at a different ground potential, they could receive a shock. To mitigate this risk, it is essential to ensure that the grounding systems are properly bonded together. Equipment damage is another significant concern. Overvoltage transients, such as those caused by lightning strikes or utility switching operations, can propagate through unbonded grounding systems and damage sensitive electronic equipment. These transients can cause insulation breakdown, component failure, and even fire. By bonding the grounding systems together, these transients can be safely dissipated to ground, protecting equipment from damage. Furthermore, lightning protection is compromised when grounding systems are not properly bonded. Lightning strikes can generate enormous amounts of energy, and if this energy is not properly discharged to ground, it can cause extensive damage to buildings and equipment. A properly bonded grounding system provides a low impedance path for lightning current to flow to ground, minimizing the risk of damage and injury. Let's discuss the practical implications of maintaining an isolated equipment grounding conductor, or EG, for the switch connecting the two buildings. The primary reason for isolating the EGC is to prevent the creation of ground loops. A ground loop occurs when there are multiple paths for ground current to flow, creating a circulating current that can cause noise and interference in electronic equipment. This interference can disrupt the operation of sensitive devices and lead to data errors. By isolating the EGC of the switch, you ensure that there is only one path for ground current to flow, minimizing the risk of ground loops. However, there may be situations where it is necessary to bond the EGC of the switch to the grounding system of the local building. For example, if the switch is installed in a location where it is accessible to personnel from both buildings, bonding the EGC can help to minimize the risk of electrical shock. In this case, the EGC should be bonded to the grounding system of the local building using a bonding conductor sized in accordance with NEC Table 250.122, based on the size of the circuit conductors. The bonding connection should be made at a convenient location, such as a nearby grounding electrode or the building steel. Now let's consider the alternative option of bonding the EGC at the service panel. This approach can be advantageous in situations where it is difficult or impractical to bond the EGC at the switch location. By bonding the EGC at the service panel, you ensure that it is connected to the main grounding electrode system of the building, providing a low impedance path for fault current to flow to ground. However, it is important to ensure that the bonding connection at the service panel is made in accordance with 250.26c. This means that the bonding conductor must be sized in accordance with NEC Table 250.66, based on the size of the service entrance conductors. Additionally, the bonding connection must be made using listed connectors and hardware. When determining the source of any issues, it is important to carefully inspect the electrical installations in both buildings. Look for any signs of improper grounding or bonding, such as loose connections, corroded conductors, or damaged equipment. Pay particular attention to the grounding electrode systems, ensuring that they are properly installed and maintained. Check the resistance to ground of each grounding electrode system using a ground resistance tester. The resistance to ground should be as low as possible, ideally less than 25 ohms, as specified in NEC 250.56. If the resistance to ground is too high, it may be necessary to install additional grounding electrodes or improve the existing grounding electrode system. In addressing any code violations, it is essential to follow the requirements of the NEC and any applicable local codes. Consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector to ensure that all work is performed in accordance with these codes. When bonding grounding systems, use appropriately sized conductors and connectors listed for the purpose. Make sure that all connections are clean and tight, and that they are protected from corrosion. When isolating the EGC, ensure that it is properly insulated and protected from physical damage. When exploring bonding options, consider the specific characteristics of the electrical installations in both buildings, as well as the potential hazards involved. Consult with a qualified electrician to determine the most appropriate solution for your specific situation. There are several factors to consider, including the size and type of electrical service, the presence of sensitive electronic equipment, and the potential for lightning strikes. Finally, when testing and documenting grounding and bonding measures, it is important to use appropriate test equipment and to keep accurate records of all work performed. Conduct continuity tests to verify that all grounding and bonding connections are properly made. Measure the resistance to ground of each grounding electrode system to ensure that it is within acceptable limits. Document all grounding and bonding measures, including the size and type of conductors used, the location of bonding connections, and the results of any test performed. Keep these records in a safe place, where they can be easily accessed for future reference. In summary, when installing a switch between two buildings that are not fed from the same service, it is essential to address the current and safety issues associated with grounding and bonding. By following the recommendations outlined above, you can ensure that the electrical installation is safe, reliable, and compliant with applicable codes and standards. Remember to consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector if you have any questions or concerns. Let's further examine the implications of voltage potential differences between separately derived systems. When two buildings are fed from different services, their respective grounding systems might not be at the same voltage potential. This difference in potential can arise due to several factors, including variations in soil conductivity, differences in the loading on each service, and the presence of nearby sources of electrical noise. If these two buildings are interconnected by a metallic path, such as a cable with a metallic shield or a metal conduit, circulating current can flow through this path due to the voltage potential difference. This circulating current can cause several problems, including increased energy consumption, electromagnetic interference, and even damage to equipment. To minimize these problems, it is important to ensure that the grounding systems of the two buildings are properly bonded together. Bonding the grounding systems effectively equalizes the voltage potential between them, reducing the circulating current. However, it is also important to consider the potential for ground loops when bonding grounding systems. A ground loop occurs when there are multiple paths for ground current to flow, creating a circulating current that can cause noise and interference in electronic equipment. To prevent ground loops, it is generally recommended to bond the grounding systems at a single point. This single point of bonding creates a star configuration for the grounding system, minimizing the potential for circulating currents. The location of the single point of bonding should be carefully chosen to minimize the impedance of the grounding path. A low impedance grounding path ensures that fault current can quickly and easily return to the source, facilitating the operation of overcurrent protective devices. In some cases, it may be necessary to use isolation devices to prevent ground loops. Isolation devices, such as isolation transformers or fiber optic cables, break the metallic path between the two buildings, preventing circulating currents from flowing. Isolation transformers provide electrical isolation between the primary and secondary windings, preventing the transfer of ground current. Fiber optic cables transmit data using light, which is not susceptible to electrical interference. When selecting grounding and bonding equipment, it is important to choose products that are listed and labeled by recognized testing laboratories such as Underwriters Laboratories or ALL. Listed and labeled equipment has been tested to meet applicable safety standards and is suitable for its intended purpose. Use connectors and hardware that are specifically designed for grounding and bonding applications. These connectors and hardware are typically made of corrosion-resistant materials such as copper or stainless steel and are designed to provide a reliable electrical connection. Additionally, it is important to properly install and maintain grounding and bonding equipment. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for installation and periodically inspect the equipment for signs of damage or corrosion. Replace any damaged or corroded equipment immediately. When working with electrical systems, it is essential to follow safe work practices. Always de-energize electrical circuits before working on them and use appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, such as insulated gloves and safety glasses. If you are not qualified to work on electrical systems, hire a qualified electrician to perform the work. Furthermore, consider the impact of harmonics on grounding systems. Harmonics are distortion of the electrical waveform that can cause increased current flow in the neutral conductor and the grounding system. These increased currents can overload the grounding system, leading to overheating and equipment damage. To mitigate the effects of harmonics, it may be necessary to install harmonic filters. Harmonic filters are designed to reduce the amplitude of harmonic currents, preventing them from overloading the grounding system. In addition to the NEC requirements, there may be local codes and regulations that apply to grounding and bonding systems. Check with your local electrical inspector or building department to determine the applicable requirements. It is important to comply with all applicable codes and regulations to ensure the safety and reliability of the electrical installation. To stay up to date on the latest developments in grounding and bonding technology, consider attending industry conferences and seminars. These events provide an opportunity to learn from experts in the field and to network with other professionals. You can also subscribe to industry publications and online resources to stay informed about new products, techniques, and best practices. Consider the use of surge protection devices to protect against voltage surges caused by lightning strikes or utility switching operations. Surge protection devices, or SPDs, are designed to divert surge current to ground, protecting sensitive electronic equipment from damage. SPD should be installed at the service entrance and at other strategic locations throughout the electrical system. The selection of SPD should be based on the expected surge current levels and the sensitivity of the equipment being protected. Consider the use of equipotential bonding techniques in areas where there is a high risk of electrical shock, such as swimming pools and spas. Equipotential bonding involves connecting all metallic objects in the area to a common grounding point, minimizing the potential for voltage differences that can lead to electrical shock. In these types of environments, additional considerations for corrosion protection should be considered. In summary, proper grounding and bonding are essential for electrical safety and reliability. When working with electrical systems, it is important to follow the requirements of the NEC, to use listed and labeled equipment, and to follow safe work practices. By taking these steps, you can help to ensure that the electrical installation is safe and reliable for years to come. Always consult with a qualified electrician or electrical engineer for specific design and installation guidance tailored to your particular situation. The information provided herein is for general educational purposes only and does not constitute professional engineering advice.